In an age of doubt, there walked a man whose power defied nature.
All right, let's talk about a story most of us think we know inside and out, the miracles of Jesus. But what if I told you the most mind-blowing part of that story isn't the miracles themselves, but the fact that he might not have been the only one performing them?
I mean, think about it. For a lot of us, since we were kids, the image of Jesus as a miracle worker is one of the most powerful parts of his story, right? He really stands out as this completely unique, singular figure in history. You know the greatest hits, healing people with just a touch, telling a massive storm to just stop, walking on water, and of course, the biggest one of all, bringing people back from the dead. These are the stories that, for many, define who he was.
Okay, but here's the big question, the one that changes everything. What if these incredible, world-changing acts weren't entirely unique to him? What if Jesus was actually part of a known tradition of holy men who were doing very similar things, right around the same time?
Now, to really get the context here, you have to appreciate the sheer scale of it all. We're talking about at least 40, that's 40, distinct miracles that are attributed to Jesus just in the main Gospels. This wasn't some minor side note to his story. It was absolutely central to his entire ministry.
And you can kind of group these miracles into a few buckets. A big chunk of them are healings and exorcisms. But then you have the really stunning stuff, like having direct control over nature itself, and of course, the most profound of all, raising the dead. It's no wonder he was seen as this unbelievably powerful figure.
Now this is where it gets really fascinating. His contemporaries, the people who saw him and heard about him, likely viewed him as part of a specific group, the Anshe Maaseh. In Hebrew, that literally means the men of deeds. And listen, these weren't stage magicians. These were deeply revered holy men whose intense piety was believed to give them a special connection to God, and with it, supernatural abilities. So let's meet some of these other men of deeds. We're talking about real figures, some who lived just before Jesus and some during his lifetime. And their stories are recorded in major Jewish texts like the Talmud and even by the famous historian Josephus.
So first up, let's talk about a guy called Hani the Circle Maker. This story is just amazing. So there's a terrible drought. Hani goes out, draws a circle in the sand, stands in it, and basically tells God, I am not moving from this spot until you make it rain. When a light drizzle starts, he complains it's not enough. Then, when a total downpour begins, he complains it's too much. He literally argued with God until he sent the perfect, gentle rain. The people at the time saw him as having this incredibly powerful, almost bossy relationship with the divine.
Then there's Hanina ben Dosa, who lived around the same time as Jesus, also in Galilee. This guy was so famous for his piety that miracles just kind of happened around him. In one wild story, he gets bitten by a poisonous lizard while he's praying. He doesn't even flinch, just keeps on praying, and he's totally fine. The lizard, on the other hand, drops dead on the spot. It actually gave rise to a saying, "Woe to the man bitten by a lizard, but woe to the lizard that bites Hanina ben Dosa."
And then you have figures whose power was frankly almost frightening. A rabbi named Shimon bar Yochai spent 13 years hiding in a cave. When he finally came out, his holiness was so intense, so off the charts, that when he saw people just doing normal things like farming, his gaze would literally incinerate them. A voice from heaven actually had to order him back into the cave for another year to learn some compassion. It just goes to show the kind of immense, almost dangerous power that people believed these men of deeds had.
And yes, believe it or not, there were even other resurrection stories. There's this incredible tale in the Talmud about two rabbis at a party. One of them, Rabbah, gets so drunk he actually kills his friend, Rav Zira. The next day, he's obviously horrified, so he prays over him and successfully brings him back to life. So the next year, Rabbah invites him to the party again, and Rav Zira gives this incredible response. Not every time does a miracle occur. Basically, thanks, but no thanks, I'm not going to risk it. It's a stunning story that shows even resurrection wasn't seen as totally impossible for these figures.
So we have all these incredible stories. The big question is, how are we supposed to approach them now, from our modern perspective? This is where the debate gets really interesting. Well, you've got two main ways of looking at it. On one hand, you've got philosophical skepticism. The philosopher David Hume famously argued that a miracle, by definition, violates the laws of nature. And because we see the laws of nature work consistently every single day, it's always more probable that the person telling the story is mistaken than that the laws of nature were actually broken. On the other hand, you have historians, and their job isn't to prove or disprove a supernatural event. Their job is to figure out what people at the time believed happened.
And this is the crucial point. There's a huge scholarly consensus that Jesus was, without a doubt,
seen as a miracle worker in his own time. And this isn't just from his followers. The Jewish historian Josephus calls him a doer of startling deeds. The Talmud, which is a very critical source, says he was executed for practicing magic. Even his Roman critics, like Celsus, didn't deny he did amazing things. They just claimed he learned his magical powers in Egypt. So, friend and foe alike all seem to agree on one thing. This guy was doing something extraordinary.
So what does all this mean? How does knowing about Hatini and Hanina and these other men of deeds really change our understanding of Jesus?
Well, the main takeaway isn't that Jesus was somehow less special. Far from it. In fact, seeing him in his proper historical and cultural context actually gives us a much more authentic, richer picture. It grounds his story in the real world that he actually lived in.
So you see, Honi, Hanina, and Shimon, they were all part of the same vibrant, dynamic world of Second Temple Judaism. It was a time that truly believed that profoundly devout people could forge a direct, powerful, and miraculous connection to God. At their heart, these were all Jewish stories, born from the very same soil.
And so that leaves us with a final question to think about. If we place Jesus firmly within this Jewish tradition of men of deeds, instead of as a figure completely separate from it, what new insights do we gain? What new light does it shed on his life, his message, and the incredible impact he had on the people of his time?